Hey home cooks, welcome back to Gregcipes. Today I'm making steamed buns and I'm going to fill them with teriyaki chicken. It's going to be kind of like a Chinese char siu bao, except that's usually filled with barbecue pork, and I personally usually have chicken around more often than pork, so I decided to make them this way. I hope you like them.
Alright, so I'm going to start with maybe like a half of one of these yeast packs. And now I'm gonna put in about a cup of some pretty warm water, but not like boiling hot, just like from the tap. And I'm also going to add in maybe like a teaspoon of honey, just to give the yeast some food. And also a splash of cooking oil. And now we'll just give this a little mix. We can wait a minute to check to make sure that the yeast is alive. So look, now you can tell the yeast is alive because it's blooming. I always think that looks really cool. Now what I'm gonna do, now that I know the yeast is alive, I'm gonna add maybe like a teaspoon of pretty fine salt, just for flavor. And now I can start adding the flour. So I'm going to start out with just a cup of flour and incorporate it all together. This is not going to be enough flour, but I like to add the flour in bits because the final dough, there's a lot of variability to how the dough feels, and thus you can't just rely on like some measurement of flour, but it's probably going to be somewhere around 2 cups. So start out with 1 cup. And you can see that's not really a dough. I'm gonna add close to another full cup of flour. This is bread flour, which I'm running low on. So that's maybe like 3/4 of a cup. And now it should start to come together into a dough. And once it looks like it's not too sticky, then I'll turn it out onto the board and start kneading it. So then I'll just toss more flour onto it, and I can turn this out onto the board, and it will make incorporating flour and kneading everything a lot easier. We can just start kneading it, and if we need more flour, if it feels sticky, we can add more. And I like to kind of wait until the dough ball has kind of had a chance to absorb all the flour that's on the outside of it before I judge how sticky it is, because the outside's not going to feel too sticky, but if you like rip it open and feel the inside, it's very sticky because all the flour is still on the outside. So probably gonna have to add more flour to this, but just want to gauge how much. You want it to be just not sticking to your hands, because as you knead it and build up gluten, it's going to get less sticky on its own. So you don't want to add so much flour that it's like not sticking at all, because then the dough might end up like a little too dry. You want to knead it until like when you form a ball like this and you poke it, it like comes back pretty much all the way like where you poked it. So that's how you can tell you've developed enough gluten. So you can see that we haven't really developed enough gluten yet. So you just want to keep kneading until then. Yeah, that's coming pretty much all the way back up after I poke it. So that's ready to start rising, if you ask me. I'm going to put a little bit of cooking oil into the bowl for lubrication. This is going to help when we have to take the dough out of the bowl after it rises. So now we can pick up the ball of dough, put it in, spread it around a little bit, flip it over, and I'm just going to go ahead, cover it with a kitchen towel, and stick it into an oven with the oven's off, but the oven light is on, so it'll get like warm in the oven. We're gonna leave it in there for like an hour, and then by the time the filling's done, the dough will be ready to work with again. I'm gonna start preparing the filling. I'm gonna start chopping up my vegetables, and I like to mince these super fine so they kind of become the sauce rather than being big chunks of vegetables in with the chicken. So do your best to get these as fine as possible. Next, I'm going to chop up some carrot, and I like to use baby carrots because they don't go bad as fast. I don't have to peel them or anything, and they're not that hard to chop up. And they're just nice to have around as like a snack or something too. So here's the way I like to chop up carrots really fine. Is it's kind of dangerous to chop something that's like gonna roll around. So just take like one small sliver off the side like that, and then now you have this like flat surface to balance it on. Then I just cut a bunch of little slivers. And then you can line up all the slivers and go through them this way. Ooh. Oh my god, I'm doing a horrible job. Okay. And then you take all of those, turn them to the side, and go through them one more time, and you have these super fine mince on the carrots. So I'm just going to do this for the rest of them. And for the celery, I'm going to just take one rib, and no real special technique here. I take a lot of the butt off because I don't like that part that much. Take that part off. No real special technique, just I like to cut it into like a couple pieces that are more manageable. Cut them into some pretty thin strips and then just go through them. This part doesn't have to be perfect. Like they don't have to be like perfect little cubes. Like I just like to get them really small. Of course, you can get them bigger if you want to crunch down on some celery while you're eating this. So now I'm going to prepare the sauce that's going to go with the chicken. We're going to add a 1/4 cup of soy sauce, a 1/4 cup of chicken stock, and a 1/4 cup of mirin. And last but not least, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I'm just using regular white granulated sugar. We'll use this in a little bit. Now what I'm gonna do is prep the chicken. I'm just using 1 chicken breast. And the first thing I'm gonna do is dry my chicken breast. Next, we're gonna cut the chicken in half. And then once you've cut deep enough, you can kind of like butterfly it open and then just cut straight through like that. We're gonna season with some salt, some freshly ground black pepper, and some garlic powder. So now we're gonna flip them over. Oh no. We're gonna ignore that and flip them over. And do the same thing on the other side. Now we can start heating up the pan that we're gonna cook the chicken in. I'm setting this at medium heat and add a little olive oil. And as always, you wanna lay stuff into the pan away from you. All right, just let that cook on the first side for a couple minutes, get a nice crust. So they'll be ready to flip once you can see like the line of cooked meat is climbing up the side. Once that gets like over halfway up, and you can kind of see like a brown line on the bottom, that'll mean that we've gotten a good crust. And it's halfway through cooking, and that's when we want to flip it. So let's go ahead and check on the bottom of this one. Yeah, that looks good. Alright, now we've got to cook it the rest of the way. So let's check what the other side looks like. Alright, I'm going to take these off the heat, or the chicken out of the pan onto a plate. And now, with the pan still hot and the same oil that we had in there, we're gonna add the vegetables we chopped earlier. we're gonna add a pinch of salt so that these start releasing their moisture, so they can start to deglaze the pan a little bit. You can see there's already moisture coming out of them, and we can scrape up all the brown stuff that got stuck from the chicken. We just want to cook these for a minute until they get kind of soft, and then we'll add the liquid sauce components that we combined earlier. Ah! Did you see that? I made a mistake. So just by moving this around, we're kind of helping expose moisture that can evaporate off. I don't know, it's hard to hear, but like it sounds more like it's frying now. So what I'm going to do is drop in our liquids. Alright, now this needs to reduce to thicken up, so we're gonna leave that to happen until it starts to get thick. And while that is happening, we're gonna go ahead and chop up the chicken that we cooked. I'm also going to dip in some of the juices that have come out of the chicken while it was sitting there. Breasts don't have a whole lot of fat in them, but you want to keep all the fat that they do have. I'm just gonna cut the chicken up into some like small cubes, basically. When the sauce is just about done, we can add the chicken back in and heat it up in the sauce a little bit and kind of get that flavor into the chicken. This is looking pretty much ready for me to throw the chicken in and heat it up. So I'm going to do so. Okay. I'm going to turn the stove off now, and we can get started on preparing the dough. It's been actually about an hour and a half, so here's what the dough looks like now. It's big. We can just punch it down real quick, deflate it, and drag it out of the bowl and put it onto our board here. So what we're gonna do is like kind of make it into a snake, and it doesn't have to be like smooth. We're going to divide this into 8 equal pieces. We're gonna divide it in half once, divide each half in half. They don't have to be perfect. You can weigh it if you really want to be perfect, but who wants to be perfect? Anyway, now I have 8 dough balls, and we can just roll them over themselves, kind of spin them around a little bit, and make some nice balls that'll be easy to work with. I brought our filling over, and what we want to do is press these dough balls out into flat discs. I think this is traditionally done with like a little wooden dowel, and I don't have one, nor do I know the technique, so I'm just going to do it with my hands. You want to leave the middle of the disc kind of thick, and that's where you want to put the filling on top of, and so that way when you close it up, there's kind of an even amount of dough on the top and bottom. So we're just going to press this out, and we can kind of just stretch it with our hands. So you don't need to roll it or anything. Just give it some stretching. So now we put a little bit of our filling right in the center. Maybe a little bit more. And then we just close it up. I'm sure there's like an actual technique to this, but I think the best thing is to just kind of pinch it. And once you've gotten one side closed, just pick it up in your hand like this and just make sure that everything stays inside as you close it up. And then we can just kind of twist the top closed. So these are not going to be the super prettiest looking things, but they're going to keep puffing up and keep rising as we do this. So you want to make sure that the top stays closed, or else when they proof more, the top is going to open up. All right, so I know what you're thinking. Greg, I'd love to make these steamed buns, but I don't have a steamer basket. How am I supposed to steam the buns? Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. I don't have a steamer basket either. So let me show you what I do to steam the buns. Here's the setup. I've got this big pan with high walls that I'm going to fill with water. Now I'm going to put in this disposable pie tin, and on top of that, I'm going to put a plate. All right. So now there's water in there, and there's room for the steam to come up. Now I'm going to get the water boiling. So the plate is like rocking a little bit, which tells me that it's boiling. So I'm going to turn the heat down to like medium-high. And I'm going to transfer the buns onto this plate with a spatula. All right, now I'm going to cover it with a wok. This is because they're going to puff up a little bit, and I don't want them to touch the top of a normal pan cover, pan lid, whatever. So I use a wok. And these need to cook for like 12-13 minutes. Okay, it's been around 12-13 minutes, so let's see what they look like. Looks like they puffed up a lot, which is what I want. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the heat and get these out of there. All right, now I just have to give it a try. So the bun, super soft, super fluffy. The filling tastes really good. I think there's a good ratio of filling to bun. And it's just, I love eating these things. They're so nice and really good. I really hope you make them for yourself.